Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. We are back today with what I anticipate will probably be the penultimate episode in the series on this absolutely wicked custom painted Kiesel guitar. This thing's beautiful, fan fret, wild paint job on here at the customer's request. So today we're going to be doing some sanding and polishing and hopefully get this thing untaped and maybe started on the reassembly. Not sure if we'll complete the reassembly in this episode, but then in the next one we'll finish that up and maybe do a demo. I'm not going to have someone come in and play this guitar, but I might do a quick demo with it. Maybe not. We'll see. But it's got the fan frets. It's really cool. I really like I tried it out before I took it apart. Really like it. And I'm excited to get it back to the owner so he can have some fun with it. Let's get started. You guys have seen me do the sanding and polishing process before, but, well, you're going to watch it again so you can see what this guy looks like polished. Let's get to it. So by now you probably all know the key element to getting a nice smooth finish at the end of something, assuming that you have some orange peel in your spray, which you probably will, is going to be the sanding. And so that's what we're starting off with here. I'm using an Orbital Sander from Dynabrade. There's one in the Amazon link in the description if you're looking for a similar one. It's pneumatic, so it uses quite a bit of air, but there are electric versions available, of course, of Orbital Sanders. We've probably all seen them. These dual-action random orbital sanders, the pneumatic ones, are what they use on cars mostly. So, in my opinion, they're pretty much the best option for this kind of thing, at least for a powered tool. But I'm not sure that everyone would agree with me on that. So, that's what I'm using, and I've got a 1500 grit pad on there right now. I don't have a ton of orange peel in here, so I don't have to go really aggressive in terms of what grit I'm using, and also I want to make sure that I'm not taking off too much because that's going to eat into my paint more than I need it to. If you don't have an orbital sander, that's fine. Try using a block. That's also a very good method, and of course in some circumstances like the edges, it's easiest just to hand sand. Ideally you don't want to hand sand the whole thing though, because your hand isn't flat, and what you're looking for is a flat surface. Now the back and the front of this guitar are going to have slightly different finishes to them, not in terms of gloss, but just in terms of what we end up with for topography, for lack of a better way of putting it. You see the back is perfectly flat, and so on the back I'm going to go for a nice level mirror finish type look, whereas the front has that blood spatter effect on it, and in order to bury that blood spatter we would need a ton of coats of clear, and we'd be creating a bigger ridge between the front and back of this guitar, which are gloss and have this graphic on them, and the sides of the guitar, which are a satiny type of matte finish with no graphics. So we're going to have a really cool distinction between the two when it's untaped, but we do have to be cognizant of that. We don't want to create a big ridge there, and in fact I'm going to do a little bit of reduction work on that ridge so that it's not particularly noticeable to anybody holding the guitar or anything like that. So what we end up with here, luckily, the blood stains are, well, they're a cool, interesting aspect, and having a little bit of a bump where the actual blood is supposed to be is actually a cool little feature. So on the front, we're going to have a little bit less of that perfectly smooth mirror finish, and we're going to have a touch of texture given to us by those blood stains, and that's going to look awesome, at least as far as I'm concerned. Whereas on the back, we don't have the blood spotting, and so we're going to go for the classic, just completely flat mirror finish, and we'll polish that up, and that'll be kind of the more standard thing. That's basically the only distinction between the approach between the front and back. So we're doing the 1500 grit for both. On the back, I'm going right down till it's perfectly even until there are no marks, and on the front, I'm smoothing it out somewhat, and I still want to be able to sand and polish here, but I don't want to try and take those blood marks out completely, because if I do that, I'm going to sand right into them. I don't have 8 coats of clear on this thing. I didn't want to build up a crazy layer that you'd feel. So now we're going in with our 2000 grit, and then it'll be 4000. We're just building to that nice smooth finish. 4000 is plenty smooth. I could polish out at 2000 almost certainly. If I had a different kind of polishing setup, like a pedestal polisher with certain types of compounds, I could polish out the 1500 in fact. But having a couple of these extra steps is fine. It helps smooth things out, make sure everything's nice and level. And with these, I've got the foam backed 2 and 4000. These are Mirka Abralon Pads. Those are also available in the Amazon link in the description if you're looking for them. But what's nice about these is if you are doing, in particular, I mean, you gotta flatten out with something flat first. But if you are doing something like this where you've got those blood stains, well, I can go over them with these and not have to worry too much about doing any damage to them, because for one, they're very fine, so they remove very, very little material at a time. And also, they're foam backed, so they're less likely to dig in exclusively to that area. They're just smoothing everything out, so it's a little easier to polish in the end. So that's the last two steps for sanding for that. And then on the back, I'm going to do the same, 2000 and 4000. Of course, on the back, I don't have to use my little makeshift block there to get between the pickups. And if I had removed the pickups, I wouldn't have to do that either. But for the purpose of this build, and the way that electronics are all installed on a Kiesel, I didn't want to do that, and I'd rather do it this way than have to take those out and put them back in. So we finish up on the back. We get our 2000 grit and then our 4000 grit, and you'll have seen that I am carefully cleaning between grits here. I don't want to leave any chunks of dirt or dust on there that might embed themselves in the paper and cause scratching. And yeah, we get this nice and smooth so that we can move on to our polishing process, which is where we're going next. Now, of course, it's also very important to clean between sanding and polishing for the same reason. You don't want to get that sanding dust on the polishing pad, because then you're going to be grinding that into the body. You're going to be causing scratches from that and whatnot. You also want to clean carefully between compound and polish, or between different kinds of polish as you're moving up. So keep that in mind. It's prudent to clean frequently. You guys have seen me do this before. I use I have a bunch of 3M compounds, and I've got this Norton liquid ice that's supposed to be a single stage. You just use it a few times with varying pads and get a perfect finish. I like to combine the two in kind of a weird way, so I start with the Norton liquid ice kind of as my compound, and then I move up to the 3M micro polish, which you'll see me use to finish off, to make sure that everything's nice and smooth. So I've just got my Dynabrade here, which was turned down lower for the purpose of sanding. I've got it cranked all the way up now for the polishing, and that has served me well with this type of clear coat. This is the Car Rep clear coat. It's a 2K, and so yes, this has served me well for polishing that. It seems to work just fine for polishing pretty much everything. So despite the fact that I have a couple of dedicated polishers, a 3-inch and a Porter and Cable Electric that is a 2-hand unit that works with 5-inch or 6-inch depending on what pad I put on it, I've actually found that this is a great option. And so if you're trying to determine what you need to buy for polishing, well, turns out you can get away with just the one piece of equipment. You get yourself a decent Orbital Sander, and you just crank it up all the way when you want to do the polishing portion of the process. And I've got a 5-inch pad on this sander, even though it came with a 6-inch, so I've replaced that. And I'm using the Chemical Guys pads, which you can also find in the Amazon link in the description if you're looking for them, along with the polish for that matter. So that's the equipment. I think that's about the only times I'll need to tell you about things in the description, because that's all you need to have to be able to do this process. And you'll see that this starts to look pretty shiny again here from the liquid ice, and we'll make it even shinier as we move on to that 3M. Just in case there was any confusion, all of that sped up video is sped up to 300%. I'm using what I'd call medium pressure for this, and yeah, you go back and forth. Don't use too much compound. Spread it around first so you get some saturation on the pad like you see me do there. And you want to make sure that the pad's pretty well coated, not in a thick layer, but that there's a little bit of coverage there, so that you're not just burning into your surface with foam with nothing on it, but not so much compound that it's spitting all over the place. You don't want it spraying at you. This is a problem that I had with some of my earlier polishing work, is I put way too much compound on there, way too much polish, and it was spraying all over the place. And it just really wasn't as effective as it could have been because of that. So I've gotten over that, so to speak, and now I'm using a lot less, not blowing through material as quickly, and I'm finding that it's a lot more effective. As you will see in a moment, I end up with a pretty well perfect finish on the back here. You can already start to see the reflection in it of me working, and you'll see momentarily the reflection of well, a bunch of stuff as we take a closer look here. But first, we're going to have to finish off with this pad and this compound, and then we're going to move on to a softer pad. So there are kind of two elements that you need to be paying attention to as you're working your way up in the polishing process. It's a lot like working your way up the grits in the sanding process. The polish and compound are abrasive. They're a lot like sandpaper, but a lot finer. So that's kind of what they're doing, is they're removing just a very, very tiny amount of material and kind of filling things in to give you that beautiful gloss that you're starting to see there. And again, you can kind of see my reflection working in there. But now I'm moving on to this blue pad, which is a finer pad. So it's basically a softer pad that I'm using. And this is going to be the next step in the process. And again, I'm not going to use too much polish. I just want to get a layer on the pad and kind of move it around a bit. And then with medium pressure, I'll finish up here. And this will be the last step in the polishing process for this one. And you'll see what it gives me as a result. I'll spoil it for you. I'm pretty damn happy with how this turned out. I'm a big fan of this paint job, actually, and I think I might do something similar on one of my guitars. Maybe a little less out there, because again, the client on this one wanted something crazy to match his really metal guitar. Maybe the one I do will be just as out there. Who knows? I haven't come up with it yet. But for this last step, this one's going to be a little quicker. It won't take as long for me to complete it. I haven't sped this up, so here you can see how fast I actually move when I do this. I thought having a look at that would actually be helpful for you guys. So this is the speed that I would generally kind of polish at for the last stage. The ones before it. And then here we just do the finishing touches. We smooth everything out the last little bit, clean it off, and then you'll get to see what it looks like. What it looks like basically finished. So here we go with that, and you can see the reflection of my shop towels and the polishes in there as we move by, and that's what we're left with. I'm pretty happy with it. Like I said, I think leveling something out like this, it has its place. I don't do it always, as you guys will know if you watch my channel a lot. Sometimes I like a little wood grain, a little texture, a little something to make my finish look less factory and more me, if you will. But for the purpose of a paint job like this, I like doing a nice polish like this. So there you go. You can see the reflection of the lights and of the the ceiling slats and everything, and the fan in there. I'm sure there are people who can do an even better job. I think Adrian Moreno, for one, he's got a channel, I believe. I forget what exactly his company is called, but if you find him on Instagram and stuff, he does incredible work. You can probably use a set of tweezers to pull eyebrow hairs or something in the reflection off of his guitars. But I'm pretty damn happy with how this one turned out. So that's the polish on the back, and then I'm going to go ahead and repeat that process on the front. You guys have already seen me do this now, so I'm not going to re-narrate it. I'll put on some music and you can see how it looks as I go. And then we'll move on with untaping it. I do part of that in the shop and part of it right in the case, because the shop's a little dusty and I want to be very careful that I don't go in and get this dirty and scratch it now. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for the rest of it. Like I said, you'll see me polish the front here. If you did enjoy it, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. I would appreciate it, as always. And remember to subscribe so you can see the last video in this series, as well as all the other cool projects I have coming out. Thanks again. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time.